Ready? All right. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to a regular meeting of the Madera County Board of Supervisors. Today is Tuesday, July 13th, 2021. Are there any additions to the agenda?
Yes, Chair, there is one addition for the board to consider adding to your agenda that was brought to our attention, unfortunately, after the agenda was posted, and that's relating to the river fire. The declaration proclaiming the existence of a local emergency was declared yesterday, July 12th, 2021, by your Director of Emergency Services and Sheriff Tyson Pogue. There's a request to add a resolution of the Board of Supervisors of Madera County ratifying and extending the local declaration of emergency for the river fire, and under Government Code Section 8630, the board will continue to declare the emergency in effect until terminated. To add this to the agenda, it requires a 2/3 vote and an additional vote to approve the resolution, and I'm not exactly certain whether someone from the Sheriff's Office will be here, but I would imagine that they may be tied up, and if not, I'm happy to present it further. And there's a copy of the Declaration of Emergency and the resolution for the board and any members of the public that would like to review it. Thank you.
I move that we declare that an emergency and add it to our agenda.
I think we moved to add it to the agenda, finding that it arose after the posting of the agenda.
Second that.
Okay.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on this addition to the agenda? If not, we'll take a roll call vote.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Chairman Poitras?
Yes. So it's added to the agenda. And what, I guess the next item would be, where are we going to add it to the agenda? And that would be probably at the end of the discussion items.
Up to you, Chair.
I
defer to your wise agenda management.
Because I do this all the time. Yes.
Sure,
Let's make it 6.
Oh, pardon me. Go ahead.
Aye?
I was going to say, let's make it part of the 10 o'clock agenda, and
Okay.
most likely somebody from the Sheriff's Office will arrive.
6 it is.
There's a change in command meeting at the Mayor Post Fairgrounds this morning at 8 a.m. So some of the command staff may be there, but I'm sure the Sheriff's Office will have someone here at 10 o'clock.
Okay. Very good. We'll move on to the closed session items. And Council, will you read the items into the record?
Yes, Chairman, thank you. Under Government Code Section 54957.6, you have conference with your labor negotiators. Your designated representatives are Director Gomez and Ms. Carter. The employee organization are all units. Under Government Code Section 54956.9, subsection D1, there's existing litigation, and that's County of Madera versus Amerisource Bergen Drug Corporation et al. The Eastern District case number is listed on the agenda. Under Government Code Section 54956.9, there's a decision whether to initiate litigation, and that's one case. And your last few items are under Government Code Section 54957. You have public employee performance evaluation of your Water and Natural Resources Director and your Chief Clerk of the Board. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on these closed session items? Let me see. Theo Varney, is this from prior? Okay, gotcha. Okay. Seeing none, we will recess in a closed session.
They won't let me do that. Go ahead and fix that too.
We're ready.
Huh?
Mics are on.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to a regular meeting of the Madera County Board of Supervisors. Today is Tuesday, July 13th, 2021. Council, is there anything to report out of closed session?
Chairman, there is no reportable action from your closed session.
Very good. And then we have not completed closed session, and we'll be heading back after the conclusion of the regular session. Is there anyone that one of my colleagues would like to remember as far as opening and closing the meeting in memory of? Supervisor.
Yes, we've got two. I don't know how many of you people have been up to the Joneses restaurant up at Baysore that burned black. His family owned it, and I think he was 99 years old. He was a World War II veteran. And he used to really love to talk about that times with him. I think he was a pilot, and was always giving stories about World War II. But anyway, he passed away last weekend, and he was working not last summer because it was closed, but the summer before he was still working up there. I believe he was 97 then. We lost a really great young man, Eben Hammond. Last week, he got hit by he was skateboarding down School Road, putting in that new crosstown connection, and by a car, and they took off. The black, dark-colored SUV, maybe a Toyota 4Runner or a Jeep Cherokee. So if you see one of the broken window and crash on the front of it, he's the one that took off and wasted a young man's life. He was always in the Golden Chain Theater as an actor, a singer. He played guitar. Just a really good young man. Life away. Really honor Eben and Vern. Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you, Supervisor. Is there anybody else?
I have one. Charlotte Leeson, longtime Madera resident, moved to Chowchilla early. She taught for a year, kindergarten, but she was just involved in absolutely everything. The American Cancer Society, Historical Society, Campfire. I mean, you saw her everywhere. So she was laid to rest yesterday, but just a wonderful, wonderful woman, and she'll be missed. And so just wanted to open and close in her memory.
She was 99 also.
99 and a half. Yeah, she almost is.
Very good. Thank you. Is there anybody else? We will now move to the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. Leading us in an invocation is Pastor Mike Farmer of the 4th Street Church of God, and Bobby McCauley will be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me in prayer. Father, once again, we're grateful to be at this place that you have created, that you've given to us to live in. And Father, as we gather, we remember the families of those mentioned. We pray for them, ask that you be with them, comfort them, give them what they need in this moment. And Lord, as we look forward to this day, the business of this day, I ask that you grant these men and women the wisdom, the guidance, direction they need as they conduct the business of Madera County. So be with them, bless them, and as always, Lord, guide and direct their steps, and may your name be honored and glorified. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, thank you. Next, we have public comment. And just as a reminder, the first 15 minutes of each regular session are set aside for members of the public to address the board on any matter under the jurisdiction of the board but not appearing on the agenda. The board will not take action on any items presented under public comment. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes, and anyone addressing the board is asked to print their name clearly on the speaker sheet at the podium and state their name and county of residence for the record. Are there any members of the public wishing to make a comment? Very good. We will now move on to the consent calendar. And are there any items that one of my colleagues would like to have pulled for further discussion or elaboration?
How about G, K, and N through W?
N through W. Okay, G, K, and N through W. Okay, very good. Any other items? Very good. Well, let's move on to item G.
G. Oh, got that straightened out. That was, I just wanted to know how they got so many homes on the Williamson Act property.
Okay, but,
Matt actually.
Told you.
okay, so that was one of the
Yeah,
two
Matt-
items you got
Matt
straightened
Took
out.
care of that. He got me the map and showed me what it was. So they are out of it. So thank you.
Okay, and then item
So,
K.
just so everybody knows that they were doing a lot line adjustment in a Williamson Act property that, I know, a whole bunch of houses up there, Central Camp, so they're not in the Williamson Act.
Very good.
Very clear.
All right, very
And,
good. And then we have item K.
Hey, the, you see what I wrote down here? Oh, I see. It says, on item number 3 in the backup, it says the use of disposable funds, they may draw down at their discretion when they do it. I think that before they draw it down, we should have the bill, and I'd really like to see what they are charging for the lawyer's fee and the different costs that they said they're gonna charge us to look at that and stuff, so.
Mr.
Yeah.
Carter.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. Yeah, Supervisor Wheeler. This does, they will be able to draw down on those deposit funds. I think the next section there requires them to provide a full accounting of all the staff costs
It
and
said it's full
expenses.
accounting and everything, but is that before they draw the money out? Do they give it to you and you guys approve it to say they want $5,000 or, and then what are they charging us? I mean, how do we oversee that?
Yeah, the only way we really can monitor that is we will be involved with any of the coordination and tracking the hours of time that they're involved with any input or feedback. We can certainly talk about, how we can get that information up front. I will say that, I went back and forth with them quite a bit on this agreement and trying to get language changed, and it was pretty tough. Our county council as well. So, we got the deposit down from 20,000 to 15,000. That was about the best I could do.
Well, I don't mind that. As professional staff costs, I just like to know what they're gonna charge us. Are they gonna charge us $500 an hour? Charge us $1,000 an hour for the lawyers? I just think the public should know what they're gonna charge us. Almost any other contract we got is broke down, what, even the secretaries, they got that in there, what, it's $5 an hour. So,
I could try to see if we can get some sort of a rate sheet from them on that stuff. I'm not sure if they fully have that available, but I can certainly ask for that.
okay.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, Matt Treber, Chief of Development Services, I would just, and maybe, but for the public as well, to be obvious on this, is the 41 Expressway project does cross over, and there is this necessity, which MID owns, controls, Bureau of Reclamation holds it in fee for the benefit of MID, and so this is a mandate and a requirement for us to get that project to coordinate there.
Move forward
And we will
on the widening
obviously,
of 41.
we'll obviously be tracking that and those expenditures, and again, as Mr. Carter spelled out, they have to provide that back up to us.
Okay, want to make
So-
sure we're covered.
Understood.
Okay, very good. And now items N through W.
Yeah, I wanted to, here we're doing a whole bunch of these special districts, and rather than ask on each one of them, I just thought maybe they could give us a rundown of what's happening with all these special districts.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Supervisor Wheeler. Appreciate that opportunity, and I will have Andrea Soldati, our Deputy Director of Public Works, talk on those specifics. I would just tell you that these are a number of, some are cash flow loans, some are simply identifying and receiving increased revenue into the district, such as the gold side. We had unanticipated revenue, and so booking that in the auditor and the financial aspects. But this is something we are tracking. We do take serious. A number of these districts are already at their 5th year as a part of that rate study, and we've been talking several times on those, and so they will be going through a rate study and process. And those that aren't, right, that are in year 3, that now have a cash flow loan before this, will absolutely be looking into that, and whether now is the time to start looking at a rate study to bring those rates back into the billing, right? PG&E increases continue to skyrocket. That is not going to change anytime in the near future. And so we are tracking these things and working on this aspect. Again, these aren't loans out of the general fund, so the general fund, the taxpayer dollars aren't going towards these aspects. Correct. So I don't know, Andrea, if you had anything specific or if the supervisor.
Well, I just want to make sure that we start really watching these and start doing that study so we can have these 218 votes. Really got to get caught up on something.
Yes, and so we are going to be going through another rate study process with all of the districts again. Like Matt said, a lot of the districts are in year 5 or they have never had a rate study.
Right.
And so they are in this collective group of districts that will be going through a rate study in this fiscal year. I will say the ones that are needing cash flow loans, they are very, very small districts. And so, 16 ratepayers within a district, if 2 or 3 do not pay, you're at a severe disadvantage. So these very small districts, although they do have rate increases to try to keep up, again, if you have just a handful of folks not pay, then essentially you're in this situation.
And when we do that study like that, can we, I know we've done it at LAFCO to try to get some of these joined together. Would it pay, Andrea, you're the money guru, would it pay some of these small districts like that when you said 17, there's some that's 20, some's got 30, even if they're different parts of the county, would it be beneficial for them to join together and be one district, even if they're scattered around, not side by side or close to each other?
Absolutely, Supervisor, and that is something that actually we've been talking a lot internally within Public Works to see about where consolidation. In fact, we have a project and a program with state funding to look at that specific thing on several of these 3 small, in that instance, disadvantaged communities, to see about trying to consolidate not only the financial aspects but also the infrastructure. Because
I just think it would be beneficial for them, and in the economy of scale will show that they will save money.
Absolutely.
No, that's what happens in a small district. When you get 2 or 3 people who don't pay, 5 years, say, before they can get a lien on them. Puts that poor district in poor shape. I'd like to look at that very closely.
Absolutely.
Very good, thank you. Are there any other items on the consent calendar that need further discussion? If not, I'll, any members of the public, do you have any comments or any questions? Seeing none, I'll
Move
bring
to
it.
approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Chairman Poitras?
Yes.
Vote passes 4-0.
Thank you. Moving on to discussion items. Item 6A, this is a presentation of a proclamation recognizing Judy Schaubach for her years of dedication and commitment to the Madera High School's girls softball team. Supervisor.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, and glad to see Coach Shaw back here. And we're a little bit behind because she's already at 1,031 victories. It just keeps going up and up. But Coach going through Madera High School and seeing Coach out there, and a lot of my friends played for her in her program, just absolutely loved her, and just what she's done for the community through softball and teaching life skills through it and victories that come with it. I remember as the mayor, I got to throw out the pitch at a softball game to congratulate her on her 500th victory, and that was just in 2012. So in 9 years, we've racked up another 500 victories. So at this pace, because it's going up exponentially as you see her victories. So at the end of my next term, we'll be presenting her with, I think, maybe 2,000th victory.
There you go.
But I know a lot of people that work right here in the county have been taught and coached by her, people within the community, and her impact on our community is immeasurable. And just wanted to congratulate her on her 1,000th victory. And we have a proclamation as well as a plaque for all of her efforts, and just like to have her come up. We can get a picture.
Also as significant, she's a proud resident of the Howard District.
Yes. So when I threw out the pitch, my shoulder was bad then, and it's bad again right now. But I was so worried that I wasn't going to get it across the plate. But I think I did some more damage to it trying to get it, and I got it across the plate. It wasn't a strike, but I got it there.
I think she wants to say something.
Oh.
Easier to throw a ball than. I'd just like to thank the Board of Supervisors and everyone for this recognition. I don't have a job. I love what I do. It's a passion, and I have great kids. Matter of fact, one of my former players' moms in the audience, and so I love what I do. I wish I could keep doing it forever, but 1,000 games is a lot of games. But thanks again. I love my community, and I love these kids, and it's really not a job. It's a pleasure to raise great kids, and that's all that's saying is I've had a lot of great families in the community of Madera and a lot of great kids, so thank you again.
I still have the ball from that 5 minutes. It's up in my office right now.
Let's move on to the presentation of a proclamation proclaiming July 18th to 24th as Probation Services Week. And we have Chief Childers along with some right-hand people. Actually, it's whole department, they're right-hand. There we go. But, there you go.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Chris Childers, your Chief Probation Officer. I appreciate the chance and opportunity to do a presentation, short one, at the expense of the more important things going on. But there is a few things I would like to announce. And this year's Probation Services Week is taking place July 18th through the 24th. So starting next week, we'll be celebrating the entire week. Every year, we make an extra effort to acknowledge the compassion and the strength and determination of the men and women of our probation department. and the outstanding work they do to serve the county of Madera and the residents of those members of the community. Probation profession oftentimes challenges us to engage our local communities using a balanced approach to public safety, that being given opportunity to those under community supervision, but at the same time offering the same accountability that we use as an alternative to sentencing, to incarceration. So accountability and opportunity, those are my famous words for our new slogan for probation. So it's a balance, it's a well-rounded balance, and it provides public safety in the long term. Madera County, in particular during COVID, probation staff found new ways to deliver vital services and get their work done, keeping the community and each other safe from the coronavirus. Juvenile detention staff never took a day off. They teleworked, they didn't telework, they didn't do any of the administrative leave. They were on duty the whole time, 24/7, 7 days a week. They had to fill voids that weren't expected of them. They had to act as teachers. They had to act as counselors. They had to lead activities that were pro-social, such as gardening, art, creative art, and celebrating special occasions as they came. But in closing, these officers and support staff are dedicated to serving communities and helping persons to end the cycle of crime, both in the juvenile criminal justice system and the adult criminal justice system. The progress and success of probation in California is based on commitment to providing continued quality for community supervision. And in closing, a last thing I'd like to say is during Probation Services Week, it's important to recognize probation officers and the staff that their dedication, commitment to the profession is of the utmost and importance to community safety. And with me, I have Deputy Probation Officer, or Deputy Chief Probation Officer Stephanie Stokel, Deputy Chief Paul Diorin, Deputy Chief Sandra Mendez, and Deputy Chief Jose Pantoja. So that's pretty much the whole division.
Yeah. Very good. Well,
Thank you.
outstanding. Are there any comments from my colleagues?
Do a great job, I'll tell you.
Right, absolutely. I get a chance to spend a little bit of time in the hall, and I can attest to your comments in regards to the juvenile detention staff. You know, they really do a nice job building relationships with the kids. I mean, they're just not there, you know, to make sure they're in and out of their rooms. I mean, that's one of the things, but it's, you know, I can see there's that mentorship that's taking place as well. So that's really, really important. So great job. So with that,
Were you all working here when Rob was doing his time in the hall?
yeah, yeah, maybe I could have worded that differently, but anyway. Yeah.
Chairman Porteous on the work furlough program. So.
Yeah.
Pleases.
Yeah, I one of success stories, I guess, you know, so.
Yeah, you made it.
I made it. There you go. There you go. So with that, guess what? We've got a proclamation. So let's go ahead and gather here and
Chris, thank you.
thank you. Okay, we are going to take a moment to reactivate public comment. And we have Mr. Trieber here who will have
Thank
an
you.
announcement.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize. That was on me for missing the first opportunity. I did want to provide the board and also the public a notification that under our current county ordinance, I, as responsible for the Public Works Department, do have the authority to enact water conservation measures within the county maintained public water systems. And we intend to do that today and go to a stage 2 water conservation notice. That is the first set at a minimum in our districts to a stage 2. That does allow outdoor watering twice a week, morning and evening. So it is not, it's the first step in that. We felt it appropriate and a necessity at this point based on the drought and the actions of the state and of this board as well, enacting and proclaiming drought protections there. So we will be moving all of our public water systems to a minimum of a stage 2 water conservation method. Again, that's 2-day-a-week watering, mornings and evenings. So wanted to inform the board and the public of that before we enact.
That's today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
Yes.
to that point, so after, because I knew the next drought is always right around the corner, after the last time we had gone on stage 2, I've continued to have my my landscaping on 2 days a week, and then some hand watering here and there. But there is, you can still have a nice yard with putting in those watering measures. And you know, I have an app that shows I save about 23%, and my I think my yard still looks relatively good. Maybe my neighbors would say something different, but it is possible. And I think it's important for, even when we lift these, for finding ways to continue that water saving even after the fact. So I just want to put that in.
And just to be clear, right, we do have districts right now that are on stage 3 and 3.5 watering restrictions. So this is moving, as again, everybody to a minimum of a stage 2 conservation measure. And we continue to track all of those water systems every day, every hour, and work through those things. So I wanted to be upfront for the public and the board as well to let you know that, but we will be enacting that today.
Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Matt, is that mountains too?
Yes, every public water system in the county maintains and
Or
manages.
you'll get the pit team to put out a notice so that
Absolutely.
I can get it and I'll put it all over.
Yep.
Very good. Are there any comments from the members of the public? Hearing none, thank you very much. It is 10:31, and that means it's time for our GSA report. This is a presentation update on the Madera County Groundwater Sustainability Agency. Stephanie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is your update on GSA activities. Let me just PowerPoint up. Okay, here we go. So I wanted to update you on our outreach. That includes some interbasin work, a drought working group, which has recently been formed with internal and external partners, water market simulation, and our rates study. So as you know, your board took a groundbreaking step and developed and adopted an allocation in early June. We're developing some outreach materials to send out. You'll see a screenshot of them there. We also had an additional public workshop June 16th. We did the hybrid format we've been doing, with Farm Bureau being the in-person location. Thank you to Farm Bureau, as well as doing it on Zoom. We had about 100 people on Zoom and 20 people at the Farm Bureau. We talked
That's a
through.
good turnout.
Yeah, it was really good turnout. We talked about recharge, our strategic agricultural land conservation, as well as the allocation and domestic well. So big workshop, very well attended, June 16th. We have had an interbasin coordination meeting. You'll see those 4 subbasins listed there on the slide, including Madera, Chowchilla, Merced, and the Delta Mendota. So very large coordination meetings. These are held on WebEx with some people deemed speakers and some people as listeners. The focus is on subsidence, which is a concern primarily driven by the Delta Mendota from impact on their facilities, particularly Sac Dam. We have formed a drought working group. It's a combination of internal and external partners. It met a couple Fridays ago, and we're going to meet this Friday again. We can loop in whoever would like to be involved, but the idea is to use this group for communication and coordination so that we all know what each other is doing. Linked to that, the Partnership for the San Joaquin Valley, which is a group of valley counties, has Supervisor Poitras is representing our county on that. There is a water working group that is attempting to coordinate valley-wide messaging about drought, mainly so that people are really clear where they can go in order to receive help if they have issues with domestic wells. We are hosting another hybrid workshop July 20th, where self-help is going to review the drought programs that they have for domestic wells. I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but self-help is being funded directly from the state board. So rather than funds going through county or other local sources, they're going through self-help. So this is intended for us to use. And there are funds for emergency supplies of water, including bottled water, tanks, and help with wells. There is also funds for water quality tests and additional supplies if you need it. I wanted to bring some water market simulation feedback to you. So these are based on the last round of the water market. You can see a fair amount of enthusiasm. I believe the market offers the best method to allocate a scarce resource, such as groundwater, which is why I choose to buy and sell. It is absolutely necessary. This simulation is providing a glimpse into the future and allows me to think about what I need to do to survive. So that's the second person. Third person, great game, especially if it's both sides that are learning, which is true. We are learning as well. Learning they're having to change and be more flexible, but then I've learned from experience never to trust government. I hope you can prove me wrong. We do our best, but it is what it is. I'm learning a lot from the pilot process and would very much like to see it implemented during the coming years in Sigma. And then someone who wants 2 different simulations where they can try out different strategies. So this is all funded through a grant from the Bureau of Reclamation. So you can see people are finding this to be pretty useful to simulate a water market, particularly multiple years with scarcer and scarcer supply. And I know that you are anxious for an update on the rate study. We have finished the engineering portions that need to go into it, recharge programs that need to be funded over 5 years, land repurposing, and domestic well mitigation. Raf Tellis, the consultant, will be able to provide an update to you with key input at policy level choices in August. And I think that is it. Let me see if I can, one more slide. I know there are some niggling issues on the allocation, including what the opt-in process looks like. We need a revised resolution for the allocation approach that updates Exhibit A based on the 2020 ETAW. So these are things that we are working on and we'll come back to you. And rate consultant will be in August. I would be glad to answer any questions you have.
Very good. Are there any questions of Stephanie? Seeing or hearing none, are there any members of the public who have any comments or questions?
Guess you're doing a pretty good job.
Well, questions are okay.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Moving on to item 6C, this is an update on the Creek Fire recovery process. Dexter.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. Dexter Martin, Environmental Health. Before I begin, I just wanted to send our thoughts and prayers to all those people and firefighters dealing with the river fire right now. I will be giving a brief update on the Creek Fire recovery process. I'll be giving some timelines and the process that we went through to help and assist property owners during the Creek Fire recovery.
Coming.
Great, thank you. So the timeline is, so the Creek Fire started in September 9th, 2020, and the fire burned 379,895 acres and was declared 100% contained on December 24th, 2020. It was estimated cost was over $193 million. Total building and structures that were destroyed between Fresno and Madera County was around 856, and there was no death reported. On September 7th, the Governor Newsom issued a state of emergency for Fresno, Madera, and Mariposa County. And then on September 30th, the county public health officer declared a local health emergency due to hazardous material debris waste caused by the fire. And then on October 9th, the County Office of Emergency Services, the Sheriff's Office, requested for state and federal assistance to help in the recovery cleanup efforts. And then on October 16th, the County of Madera was granted state and federal assistance through FEMA. So under this declaration, the county was eligible for phase 1, which is the hazardous material cleanup phase, and phase 2, which is the ash and debris cleanup. And with this declaration, it entitled all these private property owners for state assistance, and the cleanup will be at no cost to the property owners. And then in mid-October, Environmental Health, with the assistance of the Sheriff's Office, CAL FIRE, and Madera County Code Enforcement, we initiated the preliminary site assessments of all affected properties. So with the team of us, we actually went through all of the areas within the Creek Fire, and we assessed property damage. When we did the site assessment, we came up with 9 affected areas, so we narrowed it down to 9 areas within the county. Arnold Meadows, Grizzly Meadows, Wagner's Property, Mammoth Pool, Apple Ranch, Mammoth Powerhouse, Cascadel Wood, Kingman's Flat, and North Fork Creek Spur area. So out of those 9 areas, we determined there was 42 properties that were affected by the fire. Because we declared a local emergency under phase 1 of the state cleanup, all the properties were included in the cleanup of the hazardous material, which included propane tanks, compressed gas cylinders, solvents, chemicals, and paints. And they did preliminary soil samples of asbestos on those properties. So this is a picture of a property, and this is the beginning of phase 1 cleanup. So as you can see, there's 55-gallon drums, propane cylinders, and things like that that will be cleaned up under phase 1. Here's another picture that shows household chemicals and paints and things like that that were in a shed on a property. So under phase 1, everybody was allotted that process to do a cleanup. So once it was cleaned up of hazardous material, each property was posted a sign that says this property household hazardous waste removal has been completed. and it has a completed sign that was given by FEMA. So once this process is done, then phase 2 comes on. So phase 2 was pretty lengthy process where we had to work with all the property owners to get them to sign right of entry forms before phase 2 can start. So we started that process in December. No, I'm sorry. We started that process in February and we ended in June of collecting signatures from all the property owners. Under phase 2, they did a site assessment, they did debris removal, they did sampling, and then they did a final inspection. That was all included under phase 2. And here's some pictures of phase 2. So this is a property that all the hazardous material has already been cleaned up. And this is a process as they're starting to clean up. And if there were trees in the way of the removal process, they would take out the trees as well. And this is the property where, as they're finally getting all the material, ash and debris, and they actually will remove the foundation as well. And you can see the slide on the right is the actual completion of the cleanup from the beginning to the end. And if a property has septic system that could be identified, the state would put a cap on it and they would mark it for the property owners. So under the phase 2, once the cleanup is completely done, Cal Recycle and Cal OES, they would issue a cleanup waiver that indicates this property is completed, and that property owner can now go and get a building permit to start the rebuilding process. So their property has actually received a clean bill of health to start rebuilding. So as of June 11th, Madera County Fermi landfill received 1,315 tons of ash and debris from the material under the phase 2. And then as of July 8th, just last week, our department, Environmental Health, received 32 final sign-offs of forms for the property owners. So now those property owners can start rebuilding. So out of the 42 that we started with, we have 32 that are finally completed where they can start rebuilding. Before I conclude, I really want to thank a couple of agencies that helped us out along the way and always offered to help. And every time, because we were on a lot of deadlines with the state to submit paperwork, and we were always on timeline. And every time I reached out to other departments, everybody was always willing to help. So I want to really thank the county administration, sheriff's office, county council, public health, IT, the PIT team, Supervisor Wheeler and his chief of staff, chief of development services, public works, planning, and of course my department, environmental health. I'm available for any questions.
Pretty much the whole county.
Yes. It was a group effort.
Group effort, very good.
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler.
Yeah, those last 10, are they being done, or are they opt out, or are they just not quite finished yet?
Well, out of the 10, there's probably 8 of them that were on state, federal lands that were included under phase 2. They were included under phase 1 for the hazardous material removal, but the phase 2, they weren't.
Oh, okay,
But most of the ones that were private property owners were taken care of.
okay, good. Want to know if there's any hiccups that we could help with, so.
Very good. Are there any other comments, questions? I think for me, one of the most significant things was what you said early on, no deaths recorded.
Yeah.
And I think
Right,
that's
really important. That's unbelievable, the way that fire was.
right.
Unbelievable.
Exactly. And just the emergency response, that took place was outstanding. So thanks so much.
I just wish that this wasn't happening during the river fire right now, and it would
Right.
have to do this again,
Right.
but hopefully keep it at that 0 deaths.
Exactly. Absolutely. Are there any members of the public who have a comment or like to add something? So, well, thank you very much, Dexter.
Great,
Great
thank you.
job.
Thank you very much. You really went over and above. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. 6D, this is a discussion and consideration of approval to amend the position allocation in Community Economic Development Building Division. Mr. Trieber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt Trieber, Chief of Development Services. With me is our Deputy Director of Building and Fire Safety, Deborah Mahler. So this item was and is incorporated into the Community Economic Development budget that was adopted in June. And in fact, what Deb's and what we worked on was not additional numbers of staffing, but simply we had a senior or supervising plan checker that retired after 30 plus years of service with the county, and we're simply looking at that position and converting it, and hopefully with your board's support, going before civil service and creating a position within Deborah's shop that would oversee the permitting, the front counter staff and our plan check staff, as well as plug in with our inspection. As we've talked about, we have seen a enormous increase and influx in permitting and permit activity throughout the county. We are still running very lean with Deb's shop. She will be the first to tell you that. We have almost 600 just single family dwelling permits that have been applied for since January of this year.
600.
600, yes. Again, our previous high staffing count, we had under 100 permits for the entire year, which we are still not staffed at that level that was at our peak in that 2008 timeframe. So this, again, the revenue that is generated from those permits completely offsets the cost. And I will tell you, Deb is always in my ear about that. Her shop runs a surplus and has repeatedly year over year. So there is no county cost dollars that are identified as a part of this, or do we anticipate as a part of this action because of those revenues that are coming in. This is obviously a needed position and something that we have been working with. And so I will stop speaking and see if Deb has anything. Otherwise, we're available for any questions.
Very good. Are there any comments? Supervisor Gonzalez.
Thank you. Matt, how many people in this division will you have total then?
So with the addition of this, Deb, I believe that brings your funding and your budget funded level to 21 positions once they're fully placed, which we still have a number of vacancies. We are working on recruiting those individuals as well. So we have recruitments for permit techs and plan checkers, and we have open recruitments for building inspectors as well.
And that was all included in the budget that we just...
Correct. This is not a change or an amendment to the budget. This is just working towards that first step of trying to implement that and put that in place.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Any other comments? Any members of the public have a comment?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Chairman Poitras?
Yes.
Vote passes 4-0.
Very good. Thank you. 6E, discussion and consideration of approval to reorganize the county administration department as outlined.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Joel Begay, County Administrative Office. The item before you is a proposed reorganization of the General Services and Fleet Services divisions of the County Administrative Office. These two divisions are two major functions of the CAO, and between them, they manage over 80 county facilities, that's totaling to 836,000 square feet, 20 lease agreements, 12 solar projects, 20 active capital projects, and the management and maintenance of 346 light-duty vehicles across all county departments. They operate 7 distinct budget orgs, including the Fleet Services Internal Service Fund, which is similar to an enterprise fund where it has to self-sustain its operations and cash balance through the charging of appropriate fees for services, supplies, and capital replacements. The scope of work of these divisions should have triggered a reorganization several years ago. In reference, during the peak prior to the recession, these two operations had a total of 32 FTEs. Even if these recommendations are approved, it would still be 27 FTEs, which is 5 FTEs below the previous peak. despite a over 200,000 increase in square footage of county facilities, and as well as a 12% increase in total vehicles, primarily due to sheriff vehicles. Even though this has been proposed today, it has been reviewed thoroughly over the past years, and the staff's best recommendations is summarized as follows. First is to consolidate the Fleet Services Division with the General Services Division under one manager. With this consolidation, we are proposing to reclassify the current General Services Manager position to a Division Director of General Services. This new classification will provide management oversight to the new General Services Division, which will include all of Fleet Services as well. This action will delete the General Services Manager from the position allocation of the department. Second is to create a new position called Facilities Superintendent, who will directly oversee all building and maintenance and parks and grounds maintenance, and both plan the day-to-day operations of these functions, but as well as address the medium to long-term facility planning needs of the entire county. And third and the last is to revise the vacant automotive shop supervisor position to a fleet services manager to allow for the recruitment of an individual with the skills to both run the day-to-day operations of the maintenance garage, but also manage all aspects of a county fleet program that's responsible for 346 vehicles. This includes managing the internal service fund, setting the annual rates, making sure a cash balance is sustainable, budgeting, and as well as developing sustainable policies surrounding the county fleet. This concludes our brief introduction of the item, and we're all available for any questions.
Very good. Are there any questions of Joel? Supervisor Gonzalez.
Thank you. Joel, thank you for the information and the presentation. It's much more transparent this time. I do have some concerns. I believe that the reorganization is absolutely warranted, and I agree with it. I want to thank Jay for taking the time to talk to me about it in a private meeting. My concern, though, is the timing of this item, in that we just had budget hearings and we're in a $6 million deficit, and I don't know what that sensed, that us approving this or moving forward with going in this direction, what that says to our employees when we're asking our staff to recognize the 9% salary savings. And so with HR, when they're bringing these items forward, where we are addressing a lot of disparities, where we just approved a person in our economic development department. Sorry, you know what I mean.
Right.
But I just don't know if the timing is appropriate for this. And again, it's not anything against the staff or the proposal, because I do think it's warranted. But when we're asking to realize these salary savings, when we're using $21 million of our ARPA money to offset salaries, when we could be using that for our infrastructure, but we're trying to save our staff, and then sending the message that we can reorganize and some staff get increases. I just don't see how it's fair. And so in addition to that, sorry. Sorry, you're hearing me out.
Doing good.
We're also asking staff not to fill positions, and we're creating this facilities manager's position. And I understand that we have a lot of staff who are doing a lot of work. And so I just feel really concerned that it doesn't send the right message to the employees. And for those reasons, I can't support this today.
All right, very good. Supervisor Wheeler.
Yeah, thank you. And I can see her concerns too on that. The facilities manager, we've needed that for years. We have talked about somebody doing the whole thing years ago, way before you were here, Joe. And so we never have had that, and I think that's very important we do that. That's really the only new position, this fleet manager, fleet service manager. By merging those two, that's not adding anything. It's probably going to be a salary savings.
Right, Supervisor, so to clarify, the facilities superintendent, out of the three position actions, the facilities superintendent is the new position. It's a new position in the county. The fleet services manager, we're proposing to convert the automotive shop supervisor. And the reality really is it should have been a management position to begin with, given.
I agree with
right now. And then because we are consolidating the fleet services under the same general services, I think we can make the argument that it should have been a general services division director from the start. And Supervisor Gonzalez, your points are truly appreciated. We're cognizant of how it looks and how it's perceived. If I may, though, I think we're victims of we didn't bring this in sooner, right? So the admin office is not reorganized over the past 10 years. And I think the timing could have been better, but I think it's always, we always come up to this like, hey, we need to do everyone first. So even now we're doing it last, it seems we're doing it first, but I just want to say it because, on behalf of the admin office, this isn't, we didn't pick the timing because, we're in a budget deficit and all that. It's just, there's never a good time to do it. And I think we're victims of, we didn't bring it in sooner when times were better. But I think this brings those two positions to the level that it should have been for the county our size and the responsibilities those positions have right now. I just want to reiterate that point.
And I really think that by combining some of these like this, you're going to have salary savings in the long run. Because otherwise, we always had, especially like the two fleet managers, they had to have secretaries, they had to have whatever underneath them. Now we have somebody that's going to be doing all this together. So that's what we did when we done that study 10 years ago when we done all this reorganization. This is the kind of stuff that we did. So.
And Supervisor, really, to the point of the salary savings. So prior to this budget year, the General Service Division had 2 General Service Managers, once an extra help. We did eliminate that extra help funding and funded a lower level analyst position. And with the difference, and that's how we're offsetting the reclassification of General Services Division Director.
Yep.
The Fleet Services Manager is an internal service fund, so the cost of that division is recovered through the rates. It's not 100% general fund. Other departments will bear that benefit, bear that cost. However, there is what's hard to quantify, but we believe that there are savings in the long term, including in the superintendent. When we're able to plan short and long term, like facilities, AC replacements, and it's not reacting to the fire at the moment, you save the emergency cost of having to buy an AC right now as opposed to
Exactly.
all of that.
You've got that plan going forward
And
way ahead of time.
And the same thing with the fleet service manager. So an example of what value added a fleet service manager would have to the operations is that we can better plan the acquisition of vehicles. I'm going to use the current leasing program as an example. The traditional model that we've had was to buy up front and buy up front only what we do collect. However, during the recession, the rates were never adjusted, so we never collected enough to do that. So through planning with our office, we adjusted the rates, but at the same time leveraged low interest rates so that we can get the replacement schedule back on track, similar to the fire replacement.
Right.
But these are the kinds of planning decisions that we can expect an individual and the manager,
especially under a new
with those
division
skills.
like this,
right?
Control
And not to
everything.
knock the former shop supervisor, but there's a different skill set when you're managing an internal service fund.
I agree 100%.
Supervisor Frazier.
Thank you very much for the explanation of that. And I think another point to make is we do have a new CAO in charge of admin and how that organization should look. And there's always going to be some changes. I do appreciate Supervisor Gonzalez's comments. They make a lot of sense. I'm glad that that's the way she's looking at it because it makes sense, and you always have to worry about that appearance and that we're doing the right things. I think your point was well made, Joel, that this isn't first. It just seems like it because it's at the beginning of the fiscal year. Try to go at the end of the fiscal year, but appreciate the comments and the work that went into this to figure out how to take this organization into the future. And sometimes it does, the numbers skew at the beginning, but then you do see those salary savings later on. But I'm glad this board looks at it from entirety as a board. So appreciate all that, and I'll move to approve whenever, after we go to the public.
Supervisor Gonzalez.
Sorry, I had one more point that I wanted to, just to make sure that I added to the record. And again, it's not that I don't agree with the reorganization, I just think it's the timing, and I also think that classifying it as a division director is the wrong route as well. I did talk to Jay and ask him why wouldn't it be a deputy director or a deputy CAO position, and he did explain that it doesn't warrant that. So again, I'm not against it, but you're taking some of the duties from a current deputy CAO and placing it under the general services. So it's a mid-management position, and you're paying it at a level of a deputy director. And so I just think that opens it up to a lot of controversy with some of the union reps, and it could potentially bring some of that in from our union organizations. So I just think it opens a can of worms. Thank you.
Very good. Are there any other comments from my colleagues? Council Garza.
Yes, Chairman, thank you, and members of the board. I just want to add that on page 3 of the staff report, staff is asking for consideration of approval, and if the board makes a motion for approval, items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 specifically would be part of that motion. I wanted to just make sure that that was clear for the record, and I can read those in if needed, but otherwise.
All those would be part of my motion.
Thank you.
Okay, very good.
And I'll
Could you
second
please read
that
them
same
in?
part.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any members of the public who have any comments?
There we go. Stephanie Sibley, Secretary, representing the Mid-Management Association of Madera County and its membership. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and board members. While the Mid-Management Association of Madera County emphatically supports all managers, supervisors, and members of our association, we must voice our opposition to this board item, and consequently, item F, which is not before you yet. Some of the salaries before you today are salaries for members of the Mid-Management Association, so it is very difficult to have to voice an opposition to these actions. However, what is equitable and fair for some must be fair and equitable to all. Based on the current county financial information provided to the unions, the county cannot afford such raises. Whether positions are funded from subvented departments or not, there is still a net cost to the county and the taxpayer, and the county at this time has no money. If the county had the necessary funding, departments would not have been directed to cut labor costs by 9% per year over the next 4 fiscal years, leave positions vacant, and limit extra help staff. These actions today are the result of this county continually failing its employees with regard to salary, classification, and compensation. Year after year, salary studies are not implemented, or worse yet, are set aside. Employees need to know raises, let alone cost of living increases, are now gone until at least 2025 with no relief in sight. Therefore, it is our belief that taking these actions would be detrimental and would add an additional burden to the county financially, and we request that the board oppose each action. If the board intends for all departments and employees to continue making sacrifices to help find a way out of the current fiscal crisis, we believe your board and your administration must be the first to set the example. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll bring the item back to the board. We do have a motion and a second, and I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
No.
Chairman Poitras?
Yes.
Vote passes 3-1.
Moving on to item 6F, discussion and consideration of approval to reorganize the Department of Human Resources as outlined.
Good morning, members of the board. Elba Gomez with Human Resources. So this is one of the table items that there's been brought back to you, amended with some changes and some historical background to provide to you of why we're bringing those changes to you. To start with is the audit that was done by Shaw HR Consulting. We entered into an agreement with the company in January, and that agreement was brought to the board on January 5th for approval. The scope of services that were required of that audit was for HR Consulting to review all of the county reasonable accommodations and disability interactive process policies, procedures, and practices within the HR department, and then make recommendations to ensure that accommodation policies, procedures, and practices were compliant with ADA, FEHA, as well as consistent with best practices that are out there. Part of that process also included for HR Consultant to identify any practices or procedures that needed to be in place for HR to be able to conduct this work. And so when they brought the report back, they made recommendations of changes that needed to happen within the HR department. The recommendations included that we had to basically revamp all our processes and our forms and centralize some of the services that were being done with the disability compliance program. Basically what Shaw HR Consulting said is that we had to create a program that specifically was named the FEHA ADA Disability Compliance, and bring that back into the HR. We had to do more work with the Fitness for Duty program, and then centralize the accommodations process and make that work within our department. We had to create uniform processes, and right now what we're doing in the department is looking at our forms, changing the workflows and how that work's being done. As part of that recommendation also meant that we had to change some of the functions within the HR staff and bring those and address those in the job descriptions. We made those changes in the job descriptions, and the changes were significant, which meant that our assistant director had to oversee a lot of that work that had to be done and may not have been done within the departments, and bring that over to HR, as well as create management positions that were at that level to make sure that the work was being done. So really the recommendation from HR Consulting was to centralize all that work, bring it back to HR, and work with the departments to ensure we were in compliance with the disability compliance program. And our recommendation to the board and request is to allow us to restructure the HR department, where we are creating divisions now and are able to provide better services to the departments that are in need. There are some departments that do not have the staff to be able to do this work, or are not trained to be able to do the interactive process or handle leaves the way their staff is in HR. And so this would allow for that to happen. So we're breaking up our department into divisions. There'll be a division that handles staff development and the recruitment and selection process, as well as classification and compensation. There'll be another division that handles specifically position control, as well as handling all our employee relations, which has to do with discipline, and as well as assisting our employees when they have questions specifically about certain things that's going on within their positions. Then we have our Division C, which is labor relations, our chief negotiator, really managing that area with a staff member. And then the last division that is really being created as part of this is the disability compliance program, which will have a HR manager that's managing that with an analyst and handling all of the interactive process with another analyst and staff members. So that's really where the recommendation was missed from last time, that was not brought to you. The significant changes that were made to the job descriptions, you can see from the red lines in the changes, and that also caused a review of the salaries and the positions. We're not making salaries like changes to the original item that was brought to you, which were the HR analyst and the senior HR analyst. Those classifications, we believe, are not as impacted by these changes as is the assistant director and the HR managers. So that's why these are the only ones that are being brought to you for approval this time. And so really that is our presentation and request from you, and I'm sure if you have any questions.
Supervisor Frazier.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, this one took me a while to wrap my head around, to understand what it was doing, and a lot of it seemed like shifting, and then it was these are subvented dollars that are going to be from there. That always seems like, well, okay, then it's free money, it's not real money, but as part of our budget, we still have to be, we have the fiduciary responsibility to spend it correctly, and so I had to think through it of, okay, what is this, if we shift those dollars away from that organization or from that department, how is that helping the goal of that department? And Donovan, we were looking at the tax sharing agreement where we shifted responsibility from the sheriff's department looking over Parkwood. It didn't save us or didn't bring in any extra money. What it did was create the ability to have higher levels of service in different areas instead of focused on that. So it shifts HR work away from departments that should really have all of their focus on the goals that they have for their department, for the Department of Social Services, behavioral health. Instead of having somebody dedicated there to doing HR work, kind of outside of what they would normally do, now all of their dollars can be focused on providing services for mental health or for social service. Sorry, I didn't have that written down, but that's where I see the increase in service delivery to our customers, our clients, our citizens, is by all the focus in those departments in that direction versus having to figure out how to do HR, how to do keep up with all the different laws that govern HR. So I finally was able to get that to where that seemed to make sense, that it wasn't just shifting that out of there, it was creating a higher level of service. And that's what I want to do through all of this. We'll also see throughout this year any number of different departments. Granted, this is the first one, these are the first ones that are coming, but every time that someone comes in with a reorg, it does trigger those looks at whether or not it's within the correct ranges, whether the job description is correct. And so those will happen, and we won't have the same questions on all of those as we would on here, and we have to look at it in the same way as we go through the year and right now. Those were kind of where I had got to, but it was hard for me to wrap my head around this one and how to do it. But I think I finally now have it, and I thank you for taking the time to meet with me and help me understand this and getting the information and bringing in showing that the study had an impact, because that was not there last time.
Right.
It wasn't discussed. And so I think all of that together makes much more sense, and I think it's much more transparent now. And this is the way these items should be, is bringing forward with all the information so that we can make the best decision with all the information. And
Supervisor Gonzalez.
Thank you, Elba. And yeah, I thank you for providing the overview as well. I just kind of want to echo the sentiments from the last item, and I just in good faith and good conscience, I just can't support it. The whole restructuring, when you have 4 HR managers that are being reclassified, and you have an assistant HR manager and your HR manager, so now you have 6 high-level employees overseeing a staff of 17, because one's unfilled. And I just think it's very top-heavy. And it just, I just think it opens a can of worms. We have how many other departments are going to come in and want to reclassify a new classification so that they can circumvent the salary survey, because I feel like we're kind of implementing it here. So I understand and I respect Supervisor Wheeler's and what your staff does. It has absolutely nothing to do with the staff, but I just can't in good conscience support that. I was talking to one of my dear friend over the weekend, and they work in the private sector, and I asked about the structure of their operation, and they oversee about an $80-90 million budget. They do the fiscal and the HR. They do the fiscal and the HR work in the private sector, and they get about $80,000 a year, and that doesn't include because we have great benefits here at the county and retirement. And so it's Madera County. I just can't. So, but thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Supervisor Wheeler.
Yeah, thank you. Everyone's got to just remember that HR is our support system for every department. The main thing that their job is. And we reorganized it a few years ago. they're out on their own, and it seemed like they never worked with anybody. Now that we've got a new director, we're kind of changing again a little bit. And I think the way it's designed now, after being explained to me, a month and a half or whenever ago it was brought up, I was never voted for it. But now that I've got it in this thick head of mine, what we're doing and how we're doing it, it does make a difference to me, because they're the one that keeps us safe and legal. And we need to reorganize to do that and bring these divisions like that. I got the organization chart. You want to see it, but it don't look to me as that top heavy. It's like it said. I don't mind that, but we do have to have that visions between the different departments and stuff. And so I want to thank you too for explaining that to me, and I always get it that easy, but I didn't get this easy either, but I did get it in my head. But I just want everybody to know that HR is our support for all of our departments, bottom line.
Very good. Any other comments from my colleagues? If not, I'll open up to the public. Are there any public comments?
Good morning. I was checking to see if it was still morning. Rebecca Martinez, Clerk Recorder, Registrar of Voters. I want to preface my comments this morning by saying that I am not here to object to any of the requested increases in salary, and I want to make sure that that's clear to the people who are receiving the increases and to this board. The last time that these items came before this board, my department was mentioned and at that public comment, and now I feel compelled to explain. My deputies received a pay increase because they were the lowest paid clerical support staff that we have in county. They remained that way for years, and it wasn't something that I could get fixed for some time. And this goes all the way back to when we were living in the old building. So it's been quite a long time. But what happened was when salary surveys were done, those salaries were never compared with internal-like positions. So you had a bunch of clerical staff, but none of them were ever compared to one another, when in fact sometimes you could literally lay job specifications on top of another, but one class was paid 30% more than the others. And so I moved forward with making sure that we remedied that finally. I didn't change their titles. We did do some amendments to their job specifications. Now, all that being said, I note that in the requests that you've had this morning, the titles are changing, using keywords such as manager, director, etc. There are so many manager positions out there in the county. And there's so many of us that have assistant department heads that take over for us in our absence, especially the ones that serve elected officials. They have a huge burden. I have 2 managers in my department and 1 chief assistant. But once these items are all approved, the salaries for the management staff that are out there supporting this county need to be compared throughout the county with one another, at the very least, so that you don't have that same disparity. Because then we're going to have the same issue that I've had before, right? And that is where we end up at the bottom of the rung. I unfortunately did not know that a consulting firm was hired to do desk audits. I missed it. But I most certainly would have asserted the Me Too clause had I been watchful. But the result of the taxpayer-funded report should have been included in the backup so that we all as department heads can take a look at it, see what it takes to do the desk audit, because I'm sure that at some point, we're going to be there, and I'm hoping that soon. And it's already been mentioned, but next week, we're going to be discussing salaries due to the structural deficit, but we have to consider equity and fairness, and I'm requesting that this board commit to looking at management positions throughout the county as soon as possible. Otherwise, this is going to be viewed upon and perceived to be a backdoor approach to implementing a salary survey for a select few. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from members of the public? Seeing none, we'll bring the action.
I got one more.
Yes, Supervisor Wheeler.
I actually talked with Becky too and other department heads. This is something that we've started doing now. We've done a few more last year, or earlier, and we have to look at all the departments and do compare each one. I have no problem with that, but we, as directors, have to do and have to talk to Joel and Jay and see if we can get that moving forward. Bottom line. So, and I move to approve item 6F.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve.
Let's see. May I clarify that that motion includes, especially because they deal with salaries, items 1, 2, and 3 on page 3. Supervisor Wheeler, on your motion, there's a request specifically for approval of the organizational chart, the salary range for the Assistant Director of Human Resources, and the salary range for the manager, Human Resources Manager.
I make the motion to approve items 1, 2, and 3 under item 6F, and I do have that organization chart that will be included.
Very good. And we have that motion and a second from Supervisor Frazier. And we've had public comments, so I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
No.
Chairman Poitras?
Yes.
Vote passes 3-1.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 6G. This is an update on the COVID-19 and current vaccination administration status.
Good morning, Sarah. Still morning.
Good morning. Sarah Boss, Public Health Director. Glad to be back with you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. We are still in good shape when it comes to the data for COVID, although we're watching some things that I'll cover today. So our 7-day average daily case rate is at 3.8. Our positivity rate for the county is 2.4%. The health equity positivity rate is 4.1%. Our testing volume is at 203 per 100,000. That's about 326 tests per day when you count the entire population. Our hospitalizations are increasing, as you would expect, to kind of correspond with that case rate. Although, as you recall, the hospitalization tends to trail the case rate by a little bit. And so we are right now at 3.7 when you look at the average over the last 3 days. Hospitalizations, because of course it goes up and down. That's of Madera County residents in Madera County hospitals. And that's really what we've been watching. And all of the hospitalizations are unvaccinated individuals. We are continuing to monitor outbreaks, and so far they're small and quickly contained. I'll cover vaccination rate in just a minute, but it's important to understand the prevalence of antibodies in the population. That factors in both people who've gotten antibodies through vaccination, but also people who have antibodies by having contracted the illness. For California, the seroprevalence for the population, the presence of antibodies is 85.9%, and in the San Joaquin Valley, it's 84.5%. So we're just under the state average. For a while there, we were even ahead of it just because we had a higher volume of cases. But as the rest of the state has vaccinated at a higher rate than the San Joaquin Valley, we've seen that seroprevalence kind of come into parity. We are watching the Delta variant very closely. And it's important to understand that The only way we know what kind of variant it is, or if it's a variant, is genomic sequencing, which takes time. Right now, it takes about 3 to 4 weeks before we get information about genomic sequencing on our cases. And so we really have very low numbers that we can report. The last I heard, we had 13 cases of Delta variant over the last month and a half.
13?
13.
So we're up one there because it was 12. So.
Many of those came from a single event. That was a large event, about 100 people in attendance. And so we'll expect that more will happen. And it's mostly because the Delta variant is so highly transmissible. We use for contact tracing, as you know, identifying close contacts is 15 minutes or less in close proximity to someone who's positive. With the Delta variant, we're looking at more like a minute or two. It's much more transmissible. But the good news is that the mRNA vaccines in particular may be up to 88% effective against the Delta variant. So those who have gotten the mRNA, so Pfizer or Moderna vaccines, have a significant amount of protection from the Delta variant, and that's good news in terms of our overall population health perspective. But again, when you talk about the level of antibodies in the community, we are getting a significant amount of our protection from previous infection versus vaccination in comparison to other areas of the state. And so we don't know how that's going to play out with regards to the Delta variant and other variants as they come, because it's just not well known how that variant is affecting current infection of people who previously had a different strain of the virus. What we do know is that in California, the case rate among unvaccinated people is 4.9 per 100,000, and vaccinated people, it's 0.6. So significantly less among vaccinated individuals' current infections. So that is the main message, is that vaccination is really worthwhile for containment of COVID, for individual protection, for family and friend protection against COVID. So our vaccination rate is for one dose only 49% in Madera County. That's compared to the state, which is at 69.8%. Fully vaccinated, we're at 42.1. We are seeing differences among different populations. We're seeing less vaccination at reporting area B in particular, and we've done lots and lots of outreach in that area. Individuals aged 34 years of age and younger are vaccinating at a lower rate, and our Hispanic Latino audience is vaccinating at a lower rate. And so, of course, we're very aware of that, and a lot of our outreach strategies are looking at how do we expand vaccination among those populations. We currently are hosting still about 14 clinics a week. There's lots of access, and that access is all throughout our county. That update that you asked for on a regular basis is about our community-based organizations and how they're functioning. We have defined a difference between direct outreach and indirect outreach. Indirect outreach accumulates over time. From a marketing perspective, if you think about impressions, like every time you see that advertisement, it adds up over time. But that's an indirect impression if it's less than 5 minutes of interaction. That's the definition that we put, and it's very common for grant-funded education programs. So our CBOs together, from March to June, have 19,283 impressions, and then 6,724 direct contacts. So that's 5 minutes or more, and most of those interactions are 10, 15 minutes, where they're really intensively working with individuals, answering their questions, and helping them get registered as much as possible. They've had over 400 pop-up education events throughout the community, quadrillas, storefront pop-ups, door-to-door canvassing. And so that's been a successful effort, and we really have increased the volume of data that we're collecting from those community-based organizations and utilizing that to improve our outreach. The other thing we've rolled out in the last couple of weeks is based on some data that we collected about people who waited to get vaccinated, but then went ahead and got vaccinated. So I asked my staff to look at that group in particular, because much of the research is going and asking people who have not gotten vaccinated, why are you not getting it? And it's basically known in marketing that data is pretty unreliable. People will tell you lots of different reasons why they're not, but you don't really know what's going to convince them to change until you look at the group that has changed. So when we looked at the people who are vaccinated in the month of May, we learned several things. The first is many of them delayed for very reasonable reasons. They didn't have a lot of time. Many people are working several jobs. It's difficult for them to get the time to do it, especially when you factor in that people have had kind of side effects of the vaccine and they want to make sure they have time to recover. Others expressed things like, we wanted to wait until our kids were eligible and we were just waiting to go together as a family in solidarity.
Yeah.
Many people expressed they were concerned about the effects of the vaccine and they just wanted time to see how it went for people. And that was the predominant answer, is that people who are waiting are mostly, unless they're truly like anti-vaccination, which there are those, but for that group that's kind of in the middle, they just haven't quite made up their minds yet, it's their friends, their family. Did they get vaccinated and what was their experience? And are they getting sick and ending up in the hospital, or are they protected? So we have developed an incentive program that's refer a friend. We're encouraging people who've been vaccinated to share it with people who are around them. So anyone who has a referral code, whether vaccinated or not, they can refer other people, and both individuals get $25 when the individual goes and gets vaccinated. So it's an easy way to get free money for people. Like, we want to, and all of this is funded by those CalViva dollars that we've been using for incentives. This is not government funding, it's through our health plan. But we encourage people to log into our website, get that referral code, it's on our Facebook page, and refer friends and family to get vaccinated. Because that's how we're going to really tackle COVID, is if we're all doing it together. I just wanted to address that this week there was in the news that Pfizer was trying to get approval for the booster. CDC pushed back. There's really not data to show that there's need for a booster at this point. That was not based on science. That was based on a company wanting to have a third vaccine so that they can get more money for vaccine.
Needed
right?
a good second quarter.
Yeah. They haven't made enough money yet, and so
Yeah.
good on them. It's capitalism. They're going for what they can, and but we don't know yet about whether or not a booster is needed. So I just wanted to clarify that there isn't really scientific evidence at this point. What we're seeing is the vaccine is being very effective at keeping people from either having, if they are infected, milder symptoms, if any symptoms at all, and keeping them out of the hospital. There's really only been a handful of cases that have been hospitalized after vaccination. And then wanted to just briefly touch on, the school guidance was released yesterday. There's lots of controversy around the fact that universal masking in California was recommended, or it's part of the guidance. CDPH looks like they might be backpedaling a little bit. We'll see. That was early on. But I'll just say that on the calls, the real goal that was emphasized is getting kids back to school. That was the real goal. And when you look at all of the mitigation factors, if you take distancing away, masking is really the best next answer for protecting everyone who's there, students, their families, as well as staff. So that was the goal, and we'll see what happens. I'm sure there's going to be ongoing debate about that. And I am in conversations with Dr. Massetti, our superintendent of schools, keep our superintendents well informed, and we're still having regular calls with superintendents. In summary, COVID-19 is not gone. We encourage residents to focus on themselves and others and how they can protect all of us by working together. Vaccination is the most effective means of us doing that. But also there's still the things that we've all learned, masking, distancing. And so if people are not vaccinated or even vaccinated, if you find yourself in a place where distancing is not possible or in large crowds, you can always wear a mask. That's highly recommended. And of course, get tested if you do feel sick. And if you're sick, stay home. Any questions?
Supervisor Frazier.
Yeah, on the guidance for the universal masking at schools, I'm just very opposed to it. I've with 4 young children and watching their mental health and their ability to interact with people and learn. I've just seen how damaging it's been for them to be able to see that. Yeah, I mean, you know, I was a strong proponent of masking and doing all the things, and as people are vaccinated or not vaccinated, and they're taking that themselves, you know, they're making that conscious decision whether or not to protect themselves, whether they be the teachers or other students, or and I think that at some point we can't just protect everybody from if they're making the conscious decision with all the information that's out there. And so I don't know how well they'll learn without being able to see their teacher's face and or their friends' faces or other students. I mean, I've seen kids that haven't seen each other for a year, and then they see each other and they don't. They're like, "Oh, who are you?" Like with the mask on, and I just have seen at some point there's more damage that can happen to our kids' mental health, which I think is extremely important. That's just, you know, my own personal observations of my kids and what it's done to them and their aversion to talking to people and being able to connect. And I think that's an important part. That's just me personally. And so if there's ways to do waivers for that, and, you know, the kids that want to wear them can wear them, and I think it should be a personal choice at this point. And then a question in regards, because I also have kids that are eligible for the vaccine now, and just to give some feedback of, as a parent who is not an anti-vaxxer, I just haven't seen the data of what the long-term effects will be. And then when I see that in actual medical journals, because my wife won't just let me read just things online, it has to be a medical journal that actually has research behind it so that I'm not just spreading falsehoods. But there's been an increase in enlarged heart for young males. And have you seen any of that data? Does it resolve quickly? Is it, that's the question.
I'm not familiar with all of that research myself. I do know that when you look at statistically risk of having those kinds of effects so far in the data, of course, this is a young vaccine. We don't know everything about it in terms of long-term effects. And time will tell. But when you compare that to the risk of COVID infection and the impacts of COVID infection, those impacts far outweigh statistically some of those side effects. And so from a population health perspective, that's what we're looking at, is where does the risk lie? And so we still do support vaccination for children. I'm looking forward to the approval of the vaccine for kids under age 12, which is expected September, October, late September, October. Because again, when you compare this vaccine to vaccines throughout history, this one is far more effective than what we've ever seen before. And that's really encouraging. So I think that there are always exceptions and things and risks associated with almost any medical treatment that's out there. And we have to look at each individually for ourselves, for our own kids, and weigh those different things and make an informed decision that's best for us.
And to qualify my statement from a personal, individual, you know, both of my children had COVID, so they have some antibodies, and so it makes it a little easier to wait a little bit longer to see as the more research comes out and what happens. And maybe it's a false sense of security, but at least there is that little bit that I'm kind of waiting on to be able to see the longer term effects, just to give feedback from somebody who's grappling with this decision right now. As you're trying to get those data points, I'll do mine publicly. So.
Sure. I know, and each individual person and family has to make a decision based on the evidence and the information that they have about where their comfort level is and when they're ready to move forward. From a population perspective, we're of course encouraging as many people to get vaccinated as possible because that's how viruses work. They need a host, and it's more at the population level that we're looking. So we are, of course, encouraging people to get vaccinated. But I certainly understand where individual people, if they feel they need more time to see what the outcomes are, that's why we put the information out so that they can take their time and when they're ready, get vaccinated.
Yeah, I've got paralysis by analysis.
Supervisor Wheeler.
Yeah, thank you. The Delta variant, is that, can kids get that easier than the other regular COVID?
It's
Somebody
more
said the younger is
transmissible.
more susceptible.
Regardless of age. So it's how quickly it can be passed from one person to another. So
15 minutes.
that's not dependent on age.
Supervisor Gonzalez.
Yeah, Sarah, what's the age range of the children who can be vaccinated?
Age 12 and up can receive the Pfizer vaccine.
Okay, and then I just, your comments about the hesitancy of receiving the vaccine, it's evident, it's in my household, I have a sister-in-law who's been very hesitant to receive the vaccine, and today, as a matter of fact, she has an appointment to get it because they had a little bit of a scare. Someone was exposed, they had to get tested, and so now they're going in, and she's taking the kids, so you'll have 3 additional people receiving the vaccine today, but I'll make sure to tell her to refer a friend.
Yeah, absolutely. You can get the referral. And that's often what happens. I just heard a story from another staff member of exactly the same scenario. Someone who was very resistant to getting the vaccine, that they had a scare and they're waiting for their test results. And if it comes back negative, the first thing they're going to do is go get vaccinated. That's often an experience that happens.
And they were waiting to see what happened to me after I received it.
Yeah.
I'm okay, so, thank you.
Very good. Are there any comments from the members of the public? Seeing and hearing none, let's move on to item 6H, the Sheriff's Office Mobile Command Center.
Morning, Chairman and members of the board. I'm Sheriff Tyson Pogue, and here is your Director of Emergency Services for Madera County. So we started looking at ways to replace our aging mobile command post several years ago. Our current command post was a used vehicle that we obtained from the Public Health Department. It's actually a 1992 Winnebago, and I believe we received it about 15 years ago. Not positive on the date, but it's somewhere in that range.
Did Cousin Eddie used to drive it too or something?
Yeah.
Christmas vacation.
It's definitely an upgrade from that.
Yeah.
But she served us very well. We're very grateful to have that, and it's been really good to us. But unfortunately, it's no longer able to fully support our current and future operational requirements. So our technology needs and the capabilities obviously have increased in the last 20 years. So in 2019, the Madera County Anti-Terrorism Task Force, which includes the County Fire Chief, the Public Health Officer, the Madera City Police Chief, the Madera City Fire Chief, and the Chowchilla Police Chief, and lastly, the Chowchilla Fire Chief, elected to start a project for a regional command post. And so by using that group of people, we were able to leverage about $211,629 of Homeland Security grant funding for the project, which gave us a great start. Additionally, we're proposing to use $810,406 from the Rural Sheriff's Fund. These funds are allocated and specified to rural and small county sheriff's departments to enhance law enforcement services. We assembled a team for project development. They created a list of needs and wants, and working with that group and any other stakeholders. And then we put this project forward for a RFP and finally reviewed all those bids. We did quite a bit of research. We visited other agencies, talked to the end users, the people that actually go in the command post and use it every day, and did a lot of work to make sure that we were selecting the best product in the most fiscally responsible manner. In the end, our development team recommended MBF Industries, and I confer with their decision. A couple things to mention about this bid. It was the lowest bid, as well as it was the setup or vehicle we liked the most. Even if price wasn't the factor, MBF was really the perfect vehicle to fit our needs. So it's very fortunate that it was also the lowest bid. So they built similar command vehicles for many other law enforcement agencies, military, fire, emergency management, and private industries. One thing to mention, it's the only company that I'm aware of, not just in the bid process, but I think in the country, that builds a removable box. And this allows it to be, when this vehicle is at the end of life, such as ours is now, we'll be able to take that box off, pay to have it rehabilitated, updated with new technology, and then mounted on a new chassis. This, in the end, will save the county and the taxpayers significant amounts of money. So this command post will offer workspace for a full incident command team, including a remote dispatch center and a conference room. Having a redundant dispatch center is obviously critical. Command post will have redundant satellite internet, ensuring that we always have connectivity during disasters or when we need it. It'll have available to all of our, it will be available to all of our county and agency partners whenever the need may arise for them, whether it's managing a fire, a local disaster, maybe a vaccine distribution point. It'll also be available to be sent out to mutual aid. So we rely a lot on mutual aid from other counties to come in and augment us with personnel and equipment, and this is a way for us to also help out our other partners. And of course, if they have a reimbursable incident, it allows some cost recovery, and I believe the cost recovery is somewhere in the range of $300 to $700 per day on this vehicle when it's out on incident. So it can get significant for us. I can tell you that it would have been extremely useful to have a vehicle like this when we're dealing with our current fire. So we think it'll get a lot of use. It's a great design. It's going to serve our agency and the citizens for many years to come. And since we're using grant funds and the rural sheriff's funds, there's no general fund impact. So with that, I'd like to ask you to approve the notice of intent to award and receive the unanticipated revenue, and we're available for questions if you have any.
Very good. Any questions of the sheriff?
No, great project.
Are there any members of the public that have a comment? Seeing none.
Move to approve.
Item 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
Second.
Third.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor.
Yes. Oh, any members of the public have any comments? Oh, if I ask.
You did.
Okay. Okay. Very good.
Already
Okay.
seconded.
Okay.
Supervisor Frazier.
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler.
Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez.
Yes.
Chairman Poitras.
Yes.
Vote passes 4-0.
Very good. Looking forward to it. Next, we have item 6I, and this is the declaration proclaiming the existence of a local emergency. This is the item that, this is the addition to the agenda that we approved early on.
Yes, Chairman, and if I will, before the sheriff, thank you, Sheriff Pogue and Chairman. The sheriff did declare the existence of a local emergency due to the river fire, and that was proclaimed yesterday on July 12th, Sunday. And today before you is a resolution ratifying and extending that proclamation of a local emergency. And with that, I would suggest that any motion that you make to approve is a resolution, and OES gave us a template that also provides some additional language for the board to ratify it, but the sheriff's declaration would be an exhibit to any resolution that was approved by this board related to the river fire. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Very good.
Sheriff Heisenpoge, again, here is your Office of Emergency Services Director. I'm joined here by Battalion Chief Anthony Garcia as well. I appreciate you adding this important item to the agenda this morning. As you're aware, I proclaimed a local emergency yesterday due to the river fire. It's burning in the Madera, or at the Madera-Mariposa County line off of Road 800 in an area known as Bailey Flats, between Raymond and Ahwahnee. So I'm asking for you to sign a resolution ratifying extending the declaration of a local emergency. Currently, we have evacuations in place for Road 600 between Road 612 and Blazing Saddle Trail, Road 800, Road 820, Road 810, and Road 812. So we also have evacuation warnings for another section, a couple sections of Road 600 between Road 415 and 612, as well as between Blazing Saddle Trail and Highway 49. Some road closures: Road 600 at Road 612, 600 at 619, and Road 800 at 613. Right now we have about 95 homes under evacuation order and an additional 25 under evacuation warning. Our county staff and deputies are out conducting damage assessments to see what homes or structures have been burned and what county roadways or other infrastructure has been damaged as we speak. County Roads reporting there's at least 3 bridges in the area that are going to need to be assessed for damage. And as far as on the sheriff's side, we're currently receiving quite a bit of requests for people to go back in or retrieve items or feed and water animals. And we're working with fire to make those arrangements to conduct them as safely, as efficiently as possible. We are doing a lot of patrolling, making sure people's property and other items are safe. And I'm going to turn it over to Battalion Chief Anthony Garcia to talk to you a little bit about current fire behavior so you can get an understanding of what's going on there.
Chairman, members of the board, Anthony Garcia, Battalion Chief with CAL FIRE. As of this morning's report, fire is still looking at 9,500 acres, 15% contained. Still 600 structures being immediately threatened, out of a total of about 1,216 personnel on the scene. Yesterday, they did request an incident management team to come in and assist with the management of the fire. That team will take over the fire as we speak today. And that's just going to help with a lot of the logistical support, planning support, operations, and finance of the fire itself. So other than that, if you have any questions, I'll be really happy to answer.
Supervisor Wheeler.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to thank everyone. About 2.5 miles from my place, I got notice to evacuate, then step back and what have you. So it's like everything's packed up there. So anyway, I was talking to Chief Matt Watson last night, and he was telling me some history. 60 years ago, in 1961, the Harlow fire started almost exact place where this started, almost exact time, same date. Only difference is a little bit is the heat. It was 2 degrees cooler than back then than it is this time. Kind of weird. But in the same way, except I guess we don't have the winds maybe that you guys got on it so much quicker than what they did back then.
Right, we did.
Made a big difference. So good job. That's all I can tell you.
Very good. Thank you. Are there any other comments from my colleagues? Any members of the public have a comment? I'll bring it back to the board and I'll accept a motion for action.
Move to approve the emergency declaration.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes, and stay safe up there.
Chairman Poitras?
Yes.
Vote passes 4-0.
Thank you. Very good. Appreciate it. Moving on to pending legislation. Is there any legislation that we need to deal with today? Doesn't look like it.
There's not.
Let's move on to supervisor and staff reports. I'll start to my right. Supervisor Frazier.
I attended the Central Valley Rail Working Group last Friday. A lot of information of everything that's going on and how to keep cars off the road, Rob.
That's really a good thing. Yeah, we'll all be a lot safer that way. Let's ride our bikes. Very good. Supervisor Gonzalez.
Nothing to report.
Supervisor Wheeler.
Just one short deal. Yesterday, the PG&E had their Crane Valley PERC. It was kind of our last hearing of what we're going to do. We had all the public comments on what they wanted to change at Bass Lake, no wakeboards, no more buoys. You know, there was probably at least 50 comments from the public that we went over 2.5 hours. So they'll come up now with a report and what they'll want to do for next year's book that comes out for Bass Lake. Just a little note, COVID last year, the sheriff usually orders 4,000 stickers for the boats put in Bass Lake. They used every one of them by September last year. So they ordered 4,500 this year, and we haven't used it yet. But very interesting. And I just wanted to thank the sheriff on that. Also, they got, they've been, one of the things the public been complaining about is not enough sheriffs. They've got 2 full-time sheriffs extra on the Bass Lake now, and we've got 3 boats now. 2 wave runners they go with. They start at 7 in the morning. Well, the last whistle goes around at 8, but they probably stay a little bit later than 8. So they're doing a heck of a job of it.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Oh, can I add one more? This is just for actually next month. On last Thursday, I went to, it was coffee at Vennard. Vennard is a property. There's 2 houses right on the bluffs in Madera County, overlooking the river, and a lot of different groups just come out every month to talk about vision of the river, different things on it. It was actually very interesting and informative, and so I would just invite people. We'll put it on next month on my page on the county when it is, and but bring your own folding chair. I only had one and 2 kids and a dog, and
The dog used it?
and the dog was licking a couple people in the circle, but the kids got my chair and I just stood up. And then you can walk down. There's a great little trail that goes down there and see some very beautiful river scenery there in Madera County.
Fantastic. Thank you. Mr. Varney, any reports?
Yeah, I have a brief one. It has to do with animal services. So you may have noted in the governor's budget there was an additional $45 million put in this year to go with $5 million from last year. It's all going to UC Davis to address animal shelter issues. I guess that's good news. The bad news is up to this point, our shelter, the issues they're trying to address are euthanasias. And at this point, our shelter isn't, I don't know what to call it. They're doing such a good job that they're not bad enough to qualify for any of that money. So that's kind of the classic upside down government thought. However, I wanted to bring to the board's attention that we've kind of noted throughout the western states in the post-COVID world that there's a whole lot of people abandoning a whole lot of pets. I don't know if it's because, just like Tom was talking about recreation, we had all these new first-time folks up on the lake. I think COVID drove a lot of people to be new first-time pet owners, and now that they've returned to work, or now that their animals may be reaching young adulthood, maybe it's too much for them, and rather than adopting them out themselves, they are abandoning them, so they're ending up in the shelters. So recently, to help alleviate some of that, FMAS funded the adoption fees for 25 of these animals, so that helped a little bit, but my guess is this is going to go on for at least, say, 6 more months. So we may be bringing an item back to the board to discuss what are we going to do about adoption fees, because generally, if the fees are low, people will come out and adopt. If the fees are high, people won't. And you're probably wondering, well, what are those fees for? And the fees are for, we release spayed and neutered animals, and we also chip them. And part of the reason we chip them is to encourage people to be responsible adopters, so they don't try to play musical dogs or cats and get one and bring it back in 3 months. We want people to invest themselves in the animals that they adopt. So we may be bringing something back as it relates to the fees within the next month or 2, and it would probably be something along the lines of either temporarily setting the fee aside or some other way to support that fee so that folks can adopt these animals, so that we don't end up on that list that UC Davis is going to try to deal with. And that's my report.
Very good. Thank you. Council Garza.
Thank you, Chairman. I do have a report today, and I'm happy to announce that we are at the final stages of coordinating some very tailored training for our boards and commissions. That would be the Assessment Appeals Board that serves the county. The other is the Civil Service Commission and our Planning Commission. There have been some new appointments and of some members, and also some that have served for a while. And in coordinating with the folks that put those agendas together and help those bodies do the work that they do, we've come up with a list of tailored trainings, and that will happen on July 29th. The 3 will come together, so they'll each have to post a special meeting agenda, 5:30 in the afternoon, and it'll be a couple hours where we'll hit on some training and have a section where they can stump the lawyers and ask any questions that they might have. So if any of you board members would like to attend and mingle with your appointees or go through some additional training, we're going to highlight parliamentary procedure and touch on conflict, bias, some of the AB 123 FPPC ethics required training that we've just rolled out about a year ago. We'll touch on some pieces, and hopefully it'll be a productive and worthwhile 2 hours. If a majority of the board wants to attend, you can let any of us know here, and we'll make sure that we cover it as a special meeting. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Clerk of the board.
Nothing to report, thank you.
Thank you, and we do have, to complete closed session, we have a couple more items, so we will go there now. Right, yeah. Oh, yep, exactly. Yep, that's it. Yeah. Every time. Session. Council, are there any reportable items?
Chairman, there are no reportable actions from the conclusion of your closed session.
Very good, thank you, and we shall adjourn. Appreciate it.